Other actions can be taken to kill or diminish the impact of the bill, and that could be very important. The passage of a bill like the health care legislation is congressional authorization, but the bill still needs appropriation of funds. So if Congress does not appropriate the funds, then basically we can stop the bill in its tracks. Right now, the House Subcommittee, Labor, Health, and Human Services, Education, and Related Agencies is chaired by a Democrat, David Obey of Wisconsin. We need to get him out of that position. If we can get a majority in the House, then it is likely that the Republican Todd Tiahrt of Kansas would become the chairman of that committee, and therefore he could stop that bill from being moved ahead. As you know, right now litigation is underway. That's good, but legislation is better than litigation. Another possibility before actual repeal would be the possibility of just chipping away at that bill and with legislative modifications. Long term, though, we need to do this. We need to re-educate the citizenry on how government is supposed to function according to the Constitution. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. Last but not least, Frank.
Thank you very much. It's always great to be at the end of the alphabet. First of all, I would wholeheartedly support the repeal of the health care bill that was passed. Health care resolution 3200 was replaced in actual laws that were passed were Public Law 111-148, Public Law 111-152, and House Resolution 4872, which brought them together. That was the Reconciliation Act of the bill. The reason I think it's so critically important is because it won't work. I spent 20 years on a healthcare board of directors at St. Agnes Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland. At one point I was chairman of the Finance Committee, another time I was chairman of the Audit Committee, and at various other times as well as a Governance Committee and a Credentialing Committee for physicians. As you take a look at that, I also want to bring up my experience. I'm currently the president of the board of directors of a residential treatment facility for young girls, and we have to deal with this system as well. When you talk about the repeal of the bill, what you should talk about is what you're going to replace it with, because it's definitely broken. First and foremost, what you need is to recognize that it's extraordinarily expensive to become a doctor or nurse or healthcare provider in this country. We need to provide some sort of tuition assistance. It's not unusual for someone to graduate from medical school with $250,000 in bills. At the same time, this bill just does now, it drops the reimbursement rates for those people $250,000 in debt by 20%. You're going to have to increase the supply of doctors and nurses. The second thing you need to do is you need to look at serious tort reform. And I tell all my physician friends, it also means that as a doctor or a nurse, you have to be willing to discipline those in the profession that are not doing the appropriate things. But at the same time, we have to give you some help. The third issue, we need to simplify billing. All you have to do is take a look at an explanation of benefits to realize it doesn't explain anything to anyone. It's far too expensive. We need to understand and expand on personal responsibility, that each and every American is responsible for their health care as well. You can't, in fact, medicate yourself to good health. You have to take a personal responsibility. Let's fix the system and replace it with a new law that will work.
Thank you, Frank. We'll shift gears now. We'll move into an area of foreign policy. The next question is, what steps do you think we should take on the international level to curb nuclear proliferation in states such as Iran and North Korea? This time we'll start with Josh.
Yeah, I give this a lot of thought, and there is one really scary looming issue, and that's the nuclear Iran. And Iran cannot be contained. Once they have enough fissile material to build a handful of bombs, those bombs are going to be smuggled into our borders, into our nation, and we're going to be held hostage. We may even be, severely damaged. So therefore, we've got to take action. Number one, I think we have to get out of the United Nations, as I said earlier. I think it's a major hindrance on America's ability to pursue its foreign policy goals. And we've got to be able to choose the people who we want to live with, who we want to work with, who we want to partner with. And we have people in countries like Israel, which are critical allies of America, and they share our views, they share our values. We should not be partnering with and working with nations that don't share our values. And if we get out of the UN, I think we can do what we've got to do, which is bomb Iran's nuclear facilities into dust. And finally, we've got to get out of of these wars that we're in. If Afghanistan and Iraq, we've got to have bases that are able to take care of the threats that remain. There will be threats, but we're able to project ourselves, whether through rockets or air power, and pull back. Just get out, cut the costs, get back to where we're able to project ourselves on an as-needed basis, and not be afraid to use the military power we've got.
Well, certainly both Iran and North Korea are problems. North Korea has isolated itself. It is the worst human rights abuser in the world, and it maintains a constant state of belligerency toward us and other nations. We should try to get the six-party talks started again. If we can get them resumed, it might help. Where possible, we should demand the UN push for North Korean compliance with the Security Council resolutions. We should freeze financial assets of North Korea and those who are complicit in the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction or the missiles that are capable of delivering them. And then if we can reach any agreements, we need to make sure that we include sound methods of verification. The Director of National Intelligence has stated that Iran has the scientific, technical, and industrial capacity to eventually produce nuclear weapons, and they're estimating that between now and 2015, they may in fact be ready to go. Now the fact is many countries are fearful of Iran, and rightfully so, and that includes Iraq and Israel and Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and also the European powers. So we should work, if we have to bypass the UN, let's work directly, especially with European allies like Germany, Britain, and France, and put pressure on the Iranian regime and to try to stir the fires of resistance among the Iranian people. Unfortunately, our president turned his back on the Iranian freedom fighters not too many months ago, shortly after the election took place, and I think that was an absolute tragedy and disgrace. With regard to both of these nations, however, and others that might someday seek to attack us, we have to develop a comprehensive missile defense system for our own protection and also the defense of some of our allies. These systems can be ground-based, sea-based, air-based. They need to be able to take out missiles at various levels of their trajectory, and my time has just run out.
Thank you, Alan. Frank, please.
Nothing is better than trying to discuss nuclear proliferation in 2 minutes, so we're going to go ahead and do that. Fissionable material could be done in a much quicker period of time. First of all, we need to absolutely stop any type of proliferation with either Iran or as well as North Korea. These are extraordinarily dangerous. A strong national missile defense is one of these ideas of a deterrent. But you have to get to the basic issue, and that's a failed nation state. North Korea is a failed nation state. Iran is a failed nation state. Make no bones about it. I was in Iraq in 2004 and 5. I was in Afghanistan in 2002. And you have to recognize that in the 1980s, Israel bombed nuclear reactors in Iraq. So to think that this area hasn't had some degree of instability relative to nuclear fissionable material is sadly mistaken. So we have to have a very strong defensive posture. We need to have a strong military. We have to have a very, very strong coordinated military activity to include a national security agency, defense intelligence agency, central intelligence agency, human intelligence gathering capability. The Special Operations Squadron in Middletown that we have here in Pennsylvania does a phenomenal job. It's all part of a concerted effort with everyone that we have in the U.S. military to put that foot forward. We need to work with our allies, Israel,